In this week's tutorial, we're going to be talking about soft proofing your images and why you would want to soft proof your images before printing them. You should know that just what you see on the screen isn't exactly what's going to come out on paper or other media that you happen to print your image to. What you want to do is match the screen with a simulation of what that media type is going to look like through an ICC profile, so that you'll get predictable results when you print your images. So once you've made all the edits and corrections to your image and you're ready to print, the next thing you'll want to do is duplicate that image. So I'm going to come up under the image menu and I'm going to drop down to duplicate, and I'm going to have a copy of this image. Because what we're going to do is we're going to simulate the paper type and ink that we're going to be sending this image to, and we're going to match it up with what we see on the screen. Then when we're completed, this copy here will be my copy with that special ICC profile, and I'll save that file out. I'll keep the original file retained as it is in case I want to send it to a different type of printer or use a different type of media and ink set. So I've always got that original document that I'm working from. But then I've got the document here that I'm going to be printing from. So let's go ahead and set this up for a moment. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the Windows and I'm going to go to Arrange and I'm going to select Tile, because I want these images set up side by side. Obviously right now they look the same because they are. Both are using the same profile. Next, I'm going to come up to the View menu and I'm going to drop down to Proof Setup and I'm going to select Custom. Now what I want to do is I'm going to be printing this image to a wide format printer. I'm going to be printing it to an Epson Pro 7800. So I'm going to drop down on my devices, and since I've already installed my ICC profiles into my computer, I'm going to find the paper type and printer type that'll be used with this ink set and paper. And I'm going to be printing on Photoluster paper 260, which is one of the papers that Epson has, and I use the ink set for the 7800, and you can see that ICC profile listed right here, and I'll select that. Next, I'm going to make sure to turn off preserve RGB numbers, and I'm going to make sure that black point compensation is selected. Now I'd have to say that 99% of the time, my rendering intent, I'll be using the relative color metric. Sometimes people will go to perceptual if they have a lot of colors that happen to be out of the color gamut. We're not going to talk too much about that in this tutorial, but I will tell you that most of the time I'll use relative color metric as my setting here. You can also simulate the paper color, and I like doing this a lot of times because I find that this does a good job as far as simulating what the actual image is going to look like. And once I have all these settings in place, I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. And now when we look at our image, the image on the right is a lot darker than the image on the left. And we're losing some of the vividness and colors that we find in the image on the left as opposed to the right. And if I went ahead and printed this image to the printer, the one on the left, it would come out looking pretty close to the one on the right. So you can start to see where the problems exist in trying to print your images. Now, before we continue on with this tutorial, there also is another important step that you're going to have to take before engaging in this soft proofing exercise, and that's going to be to calibrate your monitor. You're going to want to make sure that your monitor is displaying accurate colors, because if it isn't going to matter what kind of adjustments we make if the monitor isn't displaying accurate colors. So you're going to want to use a color meter to be able to put onto your monitor and calibrate that monitor. I happen to use the X-Rite i12 Photo to calibrate my monitor, and I usually do this on a weekly basis. So that's a very first important step that you want to take. Well, now that we've got the two images and we've got the simulation of the ICC profile on the right, and we have the original image here on the left, we're going to want to come into Photoshop and start making some adjustments through adjustment layers to try to simulate as best we can the two images so we get that predictable printing color. So what I'm going to do is let me bring in the layers palette here. I'll bring in my layers palette, and I am working on the copy. And once again, once we complete this exercise, I'm going to go ahead and save this out as my profile for photo luster paper on the Epson Pro 7800. So one of the first things that I see is the image is a little bit darker. It's actually quite a bit darker. So I'm going to come up and make a quick levels adjustment. And what I want to do is maybe move this gamma slider here just a little bit, just to start to brighten things up a little bit. And I might even slide some of the black and white sliders. Again, I'm trying to start to match things up just a little bit to get more of a realistic color so that I've got both images looking just about the same. And I'm going to move that white point just a little bit more. And once I have that, then I'm going to compare the images and see what next that I need to do. Next, I'll add a little bit of vibrance back into this image. And so I'm going to come and select vibrance from my layers palette. And I'm just going to boost some of the saturation and the vibrance up just a little bit, just so that I can start peaking some of these colors. Now, one of the things that I'm noticing is I'm not getting quite as much of the yellows as I would like. So I might come in here and do a selective color adjustment and come down to my yellows and maybe move the black point slider down just a little bit, just to get some of those yellows to start to pop. And once I